Hello, this is a brief overview of the tourism system which covers the first several pages of your textbook and can be considered an introduction to tourism. The objectives for this presentation are listed below. By the end, you should be able to explain a basic definition of tourism, understand the key measurements in the defining tourism by UNWTO and U.S. Travel Association, define types of tourism by flow, explain the reasons for using a systems approach for tourism, and describe the parts of the tourism system and tourism system model, which is the whole concept behind your textbook. Let's go ahead and get started. First of all, we need to know exactly what is tourism. You are taking a tourism class, so what exactly are we talking about? Well, you may be surprised to know that there is no universally accepted definition of tourism, but I've listed a couple here. The first one is an academic definition which states that tourism is the temporary movement of people to destinations outside their normal places of work and residence, the activities that they do during those stays, and the facilities created to cater to their needs. The important phrase to remember here is outside of their normal places of work and residence. I quite like the second definition, which simply describes tourism as the visitor service industry. While we think of tourism as an activity associated with the movement of people, we can also think about it as a sector of the economy. A key concept to remember in this class is the measurement of tourism. We're going to look at the metrics used by two important organizations in the tourism arena. The first is from the UNWTO. You've probably heard of the World Trade Organization, but in this class we're going to use the World Tourism Organization, which is a specialized body of the United Nations. The UNWTO's mission is to provide assistance and support with tourism development and regulation, as well as studying the impact of travel on cultures and the environment. You can see on the UNWTO's landing page things like report on the Global Code of Ethics of Tourism, the campaign for World Tourism Day 2014, Tourism and Community Development, and you'll have an assignment later on which utilizes this facts and figures section. While I just mentioned, UNWTO measures tourism as the activities of people outside of their usual environment, which is similar to the earlier definition, for not more than 1 year for leisure, business, and other purposes. While I just mentioned that there is no universal definition of tourism, this one is the most widely accepted and noted in your textbook on page 2. Another method of measuring tourism is by person trip, as defined by the U.S. Travel Association. They define it as one person traveling 50 miles or more away from home or overnight. Well, who is the U.S. Travel Association? Actually, they are a non-governmental, non-profit trade association working on behalf of the travel industry. Their main mission is advocacy on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. Essentially, they are a lobbying association just like the National Restaurant Association, American Hotel and Lodging Association, and others. They educate lawmakers on the importance of travel to our economy in terms of employment, taxes, revenues, etc. They push for funding for travel promotion and passing travel-friendly legislation. And you can see on their landing page, here's a meeting with President Obama, a report on the economic impact of business travel, and so forth. You'll learn about both of these organizations a little bit later in the semester. Now, getting back to our measurements, we see that UNWTO talks about travel outside of the usual environment for not more than 1 consecutive year, and U.S. Travel talks about a person trip 50 miles or more away from home. Let's have a review question over these concepts. I guarantee you will see a similar question on your first weekly quiz. True or false? A student living in Conroe who travels to Houston 2 times a week for class would be considered a tourist by the Greater Houston Convention and Visitors Bureau because Conroe is more than 50 miles away from Houston. Is this true or false? Hopefully, after looking at the earlier definitions of tourism, we can we know that this is clearly false, because for a student, going to school would be considered a usual environment. Thus, they would not be considered a tourist for Houston. I expect all of you watching this video will get this question right on the first quiz. Now I'd like to turn to the types of tourism by flow. There are several listed in your book, but here are the main ones I'd like you to know. We will use the USA as an example. First, we have inbound tourism, which are visits to the USA by non-residents of the USA. Foreign nationals visiting for any reason other than to be employed would fall into this category. Outbound would be U.S. citizens traveling to other countries. These two together, inbound and outbound, make up the international tourism market. Now, residents of a country visiting other parts of their own country would fall into the internal tourism category. Students who are U.S. citizens going to New York, Dallas, Vegas, wherever, you are considered internal tourists. Inbound plus internal tourism falls under domestic tourism. I repeat, domestic tourism consists of inbound plus internal tourism. Keep that in mind when it comes to the Week 1 quiz. The framework of your textbook in studying tourism from a systems approach. Here we have the definition of general system theory as a set of elements standing in interrelation among themselves and with the environment. It makes perfect sense to study tourism from this approach because of its interrelated parts, which work together to achieve a common purpose. In this case, the common purpose is to offer visitors a satisfying vacation or business trip. Think about your last trip and all the components that are combined to make it a success or not a success. Transportation, lodging, dining, and attractions are all part of the travel experience. This interdependency is one reason it makes sense to study tourism from a systems approach. As mentioned here, change in one part of the system can reverberate throughout the industry and disrupt travel patterns. A hurricane or political coup, or even an economic recession, can have negative impacts, while relaxation of visa laws or a new airline route or an event like the World Cup can have a positive effect on travelers and travel destinations. This slide illustrates the tourism system model as organized in your book. It's impossible to cover the entire book in detail during a single academic term, but I want you to be familiar with the different components of the tourism system. Part 1, destination planning, developing, and controlling tourism. Part 2, marketing, strategy, planning, promotion, and distribution. We're going to spend the majority of our term on parts 1 and 2, which are linked by the tourism product. Part 3 is the demand factors influencing the market, which promotion of travel is the linkage in that section. Link 3, the travel purchase, which is also influenced by characteristics of travel, which is part 4. And then it links back to the shape of travel, the destination planning, and controlling of tourism. I would like to finish this introduction with a 1-minute video from the United Nations World Tourism Organization, which we learned about earlier. Tourism Enriches was the theme of a global awareness campaign, and I think this short video perfectly encapsulates the impacts of the worldwide tourism industry. Millions of travelers spending billions of dollars, creating millions of jobs. I would like to show the video here, but I have been informed that playing videos which might be copyrighted in a presentation like this is not allowed. However, posting a link to videos is allowed, and as such, you are expected to click on the Tourism Enriches video in Blackboard Learn. Thank you for your attention to this brief introduction to the tourism industry and the tourism system.